This is Chuck Sachs for Indie Opera Podcast, and I'll be chatting with Roger Weitz, the General Director of Opera Omaha. Hello, Roger.
Hello.
Congratulations on the second year of One Festival. How do you feel this year's festival is going?
It's going fantastically well. We have built on the strengths of last year and really leaned into our philosophy of working with creative artists in really artist-led, artist-driven, exciting projects.
And so when did the idea to create this festival begin for you?
Well, Opera Omaha went through a strategic planning process about 4 or 5 years ago now, and we took a look at what we were doing, and we wanted to take our role as the state's only professional opera company seriously in our desire to represent all that opera has to offer. And so we were doing a pretty good job on the main stage with a variety of repertoire that was appropriate for a house the size of the Orpheum Theater, 2,500 seats, but there's so much more that opera has to offer. So we thought about how can we experiment with venues and formats and times of day, audience experiences, and that was the beginning of the festival.
And before, you had already started somewhat before that, because you started in 2011.
Right.
But in 2013-14 season, you started with the Opera Outdoors. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that was, in a sense, really beginning of your community engagement.
Right, yep. So Opera Omaha has great education and community engagement work, but we were coming from a place of sort of a, not retrenchment, but we were ready to grow, to expand, and the Opera Outdoors was a great way to make something completely accessible. We targeted repertoire that was familiar and popular with fantastic singers and the wonderful Opera Omaha chorus. And, of course, people enjoy going out to the park. They bring a picnic. It's been a great night. It's been a great tradition. We're coming up on year 7 of that concert.
And I read it's hosted in English and Spanish. Is there a large Spanish community out here?
There is, actually. Absolutely. So that was our first time last year, and it was a huge success. We received numerous thanks and appreciation from audiences who hadn't been attending before, and so we're definitely planning on doing that again next year.
And I mean, I know that's been one of the questions for a lot of opera companies, how to reach out to the Latin community and engage them, as well as the African American community, and they seem to be doing a lot better job with the African American community. Mm-hmm. And with Latin, it seems, you see it more like in New Mexico, Texas, California.
Yep.
So would you ever think of producing a zarzuela or one of the new Spanish operas that are out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we're building to that. Right now, in the last year and a half, we launched a new engagement program, which was named after a great benefactor, Richard Holland. It's called the Holland Community Opera Fellows. And that might be an entirely different podcast we could do. I'd love to talk about that. But our fellows, it's an artist in residence program, but they're here specifically for community engaged work. And they are, of course, fantastic artists in their own right, but they're also leading projects with community members involving advocacy and citizenship and creative expression of all kinds. And they're here from fall through spring. And, I really think that step one is that we need to know what the community wants. How can we serve the community? How can we engage the community creatively? And get people knowing and convinced that opera is a form that is really for everyone. And then I think we can build that up into our programming as well.
I mean, well, there's like the piece Daniel Catan's The Postman, which would really reached out to everyone because it's the score is so Puccini-esque.
Yeah.
And yet it still has all that flavor.
Yep. Florencia and so many pieces,
So you became general director in 2011, and you're being a native of this city and state. Was this something you had thought about ever when you were going through your career?
Funny. When I left Omaha and I was in Chicago, and I loved Chicago. I spent a total of 10 years there. And, initially I didn't think that I'd be going back to Omaha. But visiting family, I was attending events in places like the Bemis Center for Contemporary Art, the brand new Holland center, a gorgeous concert hall. And, so even before this job was a possibility, my visits to Omaha were wonderfully eye-opening about the growing art scene here, which was hugely exciting and sophisticated. I remember an event I went to where there were so many young people there, and they were totally engaged in the art. They were talking about the art, and it wasn't that we didn't have art when I was young and growing up. And of course, we had a fantastic symphony and all the programming at the Orpheum. But there just seemed to be a new energy, and so I think years ago that seed had been planted. Like, this is a really vibrant scene, and so when the opportunity became open, I applied.
I mean, it looks like. By looking at the seasons, it's like 1987, 88 is when there was kind of a shift.
Yeah.
And they started actually doing new works here.
Yep.
And even eventually premieres,
yes.
which is...
Yeah, Opera Omaha
I
has
know that's a real expensive piece of it.
Yeah, but there's a tradition here of world premieres, of exciting work. A number of amazing directors had some of their early work here, like both of the Alden brothers. Stephen Wadsworth was here during that period that you mentioned. So even this festival, it's the second year of our one festival, it's the spring festival. But honestly, Opera Omaha's fall festival during that period with Mary Robert in the late 80s, early 90s was a huge creative time for the company. And there's a lot of our patrons that are thrilled and so glad that we're bringing back that energy around new work.
It's wonderful to see because, coming from New York, thinking about the Metropolitan Opera doing a new work is like a dream frequently. Or they get focused on one composer. Thankfully, there are two women composers in the mix that are just, we can't wait, as Missy Mazzoli and Janine Tesori, and it's just like, it's time. Yeah.
Well, I was so thrilled that the Met's announcement about Missy was right when we were there for our production of Proving Up. Had been invited to come to be in the Miller Theater, presented it.
Yes.
So we were literally, I don't think it was maybe opening night, but we were all right there when that announcement came out. It was such a wonderful time.
Yes, I did. I actually was there, I think, opening night. It was a very interesting production.
Yeah.
Missy likes dark stuff, but so does Royce.
Yes.
But I won't fault them on it because it's always highly dramatic and emotional work.
I think they're just such exceptional talents.
Yes, I would agree. So, what's the next goal? Are you going to try and build the one festival larger yet, or what are you thinking?
Sure. Well, when we launched the festival, our organization knew we were committing to 3 years, and after year 2, we were going to evaluate and take a look and see, do we want to grow it? Do we want to change it? Do we not want to do it? And so we're coming up on that. Now this is the 2-year mark, and so next year is thrilling. Speaking of the Aldens, we have Christopher Alden coming for San Giovanni Battista, Oratorio. James is directing a new production of Cappelletti. So we have some really exciting work.
That's
year
the
3.
Stradella, which is hardly ever hear about it. I'm lucky I'm going back to New York and getting to see La Susanna, which is yet another rarity.
Yeah.
But yes, that really is exciting. And in a sense, it's like Opera Philadelphia is going through the same thing because they're heading towards their 3rd year. They've just finished their 2nd.
Yeah.
And
they really blazed a trail.
But I know how hard a festival is to deal with, and especially when you're dealing with multiple sites.
True, yeah. That's both the exciting and energetic part about it, but also the challenge, especially when you're going into places that weren't made for opera, for theater, which is the case. We're about to walk into the Philip Glass Opera, the Les Enfants, and here we are in a warehouse space, and you're going to see it. You're going to see the building, though.
Right. And with For Research Only, which was done in the Kaneko space, and was moving the audience around, and a lot of opera audiences aren't used to that part, unless they maybe go into an Ivo Van Hove piece because he loves moving his audience around. It's all the fun. It's so in terms of the funding behind this.
Yeah.
Do you have a group who is really the major funders behind this that are helping you?
Well, this community really is such a generous community, and they were excited about the prospects and the opportunities, and I think they love the fact that critics like you are coming all this way to Omaha to see that the work that's going on, and they're supportive of that, and they recognize that they want Omaha to have a rich cultural landscape, and they see this as a way of making Omaha a wonderful place to live. Of course, we have so many important companies, businesses here that are trying to attract top talent. So I think the community, if we do our part, if we're contributing to the well-being of our citizens, if through our programming, if through our engagement programs with like the Holland Fellows, we're being a force for good in our city, the community recognizes that and responds to that and supports it and wants it to be possible.
Well, and they're also, I guess, they're lucky to have you here now because your years with Chicago Opera Theater, who does a lot of new work.
Yeah.
And also new productions.
Right.
And then also your training through the Kennedy Center.
Yep.
That's one of the most exciting things that are happening in terms of training in the art world.
Yep.
Can you talk about that program at all?
Sure. It was the perfect thing for me. It was the perfect thing at the right time. So I had spent 7 years at Chicago Opera Theater as Brian Dickey's artistic administrator, learning all the artistic production side of things, budgeting and auditions and hearing singers and traveling and learning about the amazing artists that I got to work with through that company. So what the Kennedy Center offered essentially was a 1-year fellowship program that focused on everything else. So it was strategic planning, it was nonprofit finance, it was marketing and fundraising and PR. And also another wonderful benefit of that program was anytime there was a performance where they had tickets, we could claim one. So every night I was broadening my horizons in ballet and all, amazing artists that, of course, coming through the Kennedy Center. So it was a fantastic education for me.
Yeah, I was actually lucky to go through the BAM DeVos program that they built and they did for, I think it's finished its run, but that year was just fascinating. And I sadly didn't get to implement most of it with the company I was working for, but I mean, it's certainly, I'm using it other places, and it's just brilliant. It's the way that he wants to shift the ideology and how you talk about these things and how you look at these positions, and both outreach to audiences but outreach to donors.
Right.
It's just a whole new system.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, if you are genuinely passionate about the work, and if you believe in the work, and if you believe in the artists, I think that makes, it's hard to say easy, but talking to donors and supporters, you're just sharing what the process is and what's happening. And, I think that your natural sort of excitement and enthusiasm for that work rubs off on other people, and then they get excited. And that's how you grow the family. Well,
thank you for sitting down with me, and I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of this festival and what comes the next year, too.
Thank you. Well, I'm so glad you're here. Please come back, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival.
Thank you.